Hi, welcome to my video on how to make grain spawn at home. You will need grain spawn in order to plant this into your straw to grow your mushrooms in your buckets or other containers. So that's critical that you learn this step. You can buy grain spawn online, but it's pretty expensive, especially after you buy shipping. So we're going to learn how to make our own. First, gather your supplies. You'll need purchased grain. This can be whole wheat berries, whole rye grains, barley, or even whole oat berries. A good source is whole food stores or even farm feed stores, but you must buy large amounts. Never buy treated grain, as in seeds. And also, make sure you don't buy grains that have been processed by being steamed or flattened. You just want the berry. If it won't grow out of the ground, then you've got the wrong product. A large pot to soak and bring grains up to simmer. You'll need a large colander. Check thrift stores in your area or other stores. You don't need an expensive one. An optional clean large bath towel if you need to dry out your grains on the counter. A long spoon, an empty sink, and a pressure cooker for later, and we'll cover that. Now we will make the sterilized grain. Step 1 is to measure out your grain. I use slightly less than a half a quart jar of dry whole grains for every quart I will inoculate with liquid culture. I can't give you a measurement anyway, because all grains are different in their size depending upon their variety and kind. So soak your grain overnight in room temperature water and the next day bring it to a simmer. Do not wait longer, as this sprouting will begin, and sprouting changes grain, makes it full of sugar, so that's not suitable for our purpose. Step 2. After simmering the grain for 5 to 10 minutes, do a fingernail test. Put a grain on your finger and press it in with your thumbnail. If you can easily push through it and half it, it's ready. You don't want to overcook your grains. If you have grain left, and hope you will because it's good to make a little bit more than you need, throw it out for the birds. Make their day. They'll love you for it. Step 3. Have your colander set in the sink, and while you're running some cold water into the sink on the side of the colander, don't run the cold water over the grain, just on the side of the colander so your pipes will not melt. Pour your hot grain into the colander. When you have no more hot water being poured into the sink from draining your grain, you can shut the cold water off. You may have to do half at a time, maybe a third at a time. Stir with your spoon while the steam lifts off the grain, and it will take it quite a while to do this. That'll dry it somewhat. If it does steam off adequately, for my taste, I've used paper towels to squeeze it to get more liquid out. Taking paper towels, a couple, and just squeezing through your pile of grain will take quite a bit of water out of them. If you do not have a big enough colander, this may be more difficult. And in that case, spread it out on a clean towel and use a hair dryer to further dry it. Now, you don't want it dry. You want it just damp. So this is something you learn with experience. The moisture content will be right when the grains feel damp but not wet. If too wet, there may be problems with the colonization of the mycelium. This is something you're just going to have to learn to judge. I'm going to give you some pressure cooker information now because you're going to need it. Look around and ask friends or family. Maybe you can borrow a pressure cooker from them. It'll need somebody that does canning other than just jams and jellies. Please refer intently to directions and videos to learn to use it. The new ones are very safe. I think they have 3 safety measures, so they're not liable to throw a lid and all these horror stories you hear. I would not buy a used canner because the gauges won't read true and the seals for old canners are very expensive. You would just be better off buying a new one. Don't drink in can or go to the store or go outside and do gardening or any of those things. Don't answer the door. You need to stay with your canner. You need a pressure canner, not a steam canner, and you must use a pressure canner to expand your liquid culture as well. So there's no getting around it, in my opinion, if you're going to grow mushrooms and you're going to make really great canned food. Maybe some people will boil both liquid culture and grain to inoculate for grain spawn for 3 hours, but wow, that would take a lot of power and probably wouldn't work because your filters would get wet and then you'd have a problem. Some people do actually do this for food that's supposed to be pressure canned also. I never ever do this with food. I would never risk botulism poisoning for me or my family. Find one to buy online or maybe a local store. I would not get the pricey models unless they are going to go deep into canning in the bush where I would never get a seal. I use a Big Miro brand canner and find it adequate for all my canning needs for both meat and vegetables. I also use it for mushroom production, so I do think the investment is well worth it. Canned meat is delicious, and it's great to go in your pantry for quick meals, emergencies like lights going out. I use it to can mushrooms, which are delicious canned up. These must be pressure canned. Trying to can foods by the wrong method and time is extremely dangerous, so follow the rules that are there for a purpose. You can go to the National Center for Food Preservation site to get the best canning teaching. They have good recipes, good information there. Also, there's a book on Amazon put out by the same organization or information. That's only $8 or $9. It's very reasonable. It has a lot of recipes in it. You should look for times every time you can, because you can think, oh, I remember the time on that, and you may get it wrong, and that's not good. So always check your book. These tools are not luxuries for us, but are important, essential for our clean food lifestyle. And they save us a considerably amount of money. This is my pressure cooker recommendation. I would go with the 22 quart, but the smaller one would work for this project. Your local hardware store or even big box store sometimes carries them. I choose a canner without a gauge, as in my opinion it is unnecessary and just gets in the way and also requires a lot of maintenance. The weight will be your pressure regulator and it's physics, so it doesn't go wrong. Note, I am not an affiliate. I just like the products. And I use them. These are some of the canned oysters that I made. They're just wonderful. Where to get canning jars? Not everybody knows where to get canning jars. Canning jars can be purchased at many types of stores. Big grocery stores, online shop, home improvement stores in the fall months, many Sam's type stores, and even local hardware stores carry them. So look around, but make sure that you add in shipping if you're going to buy them online to get the best price. What you want are wide mouth quarts, and if you want to expand your liquid culture instead of buying it every time, which is that could run into quite a bit of money, you want to grow them, use wide mouth pints for that. So you'd need a flat of quarts, and you'd also need a flat of pints. There's 12 jars in each flat. They do come in a pack of 12, so use the extras for yourself at home. They're great to store dry food, canned food in, refrigerator food storage, and even drinking jars. Everyone loves canning jars. You must get the right mouth size though to fit your lids. Ball or Care are common, but store brands also work too. Jar lid information. Here's some jars lids that I have found on Etsy, and this is a vendor I believe I purchased culture from before. They're drilled. They have a port for your syringe, and then they have a port for filtering the air to keep the contaminants out of your grain spawn and your culture. So this set of lids would work for the whole project, for your grain spawn and expanding your liquid culture, since there's 12 here. You will need canning rings, that you will get those on your jars when you buy them. Note, I'm not an affiliate of this person. I just like the product. Filling jars and pressure cooking them. You'll need 4 clean quart jars per syringe of liquid culture. Clean mushroom growing lids and rings for 4 jars. Aluminum foil to place on top of the jars, and your pressure canner. First, we're going to fill our jars. Use a canning funnel. You'll have one. If you have one, you can use other things if you don't. Fill each jar about 3 inches from the very, very top full of grain. Wipe off the rim and apply your lids and rings. Screw the rings on, but don't crank them on too hard, just tight. Too tight and they will be hard to get off. And there's something about grain spawn jars, I don't know why, but the lids tend to want to stick on there. So really don't go crazy on this. Cut squares of the foil to fit your lid tops plus 2 inches. Place them on the top and squeeze around to make little caps. This keeps the water from dripping onto the filters during the cook from the top of the canner. Now let's pressure cook your jars of grain. Place the jars in your pressure canner on the rack inside with your canner set on the stove burner. Add enough water to come up to about half the size of the canning jar. Set the lid on the canner and turn to seat it and put the pressure regulator that is for your altitude. Turn your stove on high until the pressure regulator rocks or turns. Then turn the burner down to a little over halfway. You want this regulator to move every few minutes, but you don't want it wildly dancing around, because if it's doing that, you're losing too much liquid. If it is dancing around, turn it down some more. This will depend on your individual stove. I can't tell you the setting. If it isn't moving, turn it up a little and wait and see. And if it doesn't move after a while, turn it up some more. Start your time when that weight starts moving, turning. In the case of Miro or in other brands, it will rock. If it starts going crazy, don't panic. Just turn it down and give it a minute to catch up to the lower temperature. Monitor and cook for 1 hour. And 1 hour and a half isn't a bad idea. That's why you need plenty of liquid on there, and that's why you don't want to have it steaming wildly all the time and running out all your liquid. Under correct pressure, time when it reaches pressure, and turn off the stove after the 1 hour. Just turn the stove off. Now unload your pressure cooked grain. The next day, or after it's sit there for maybe even in 9 or 10 hours, open the lid and take your jars out and wipe them down. Store in the room temperature area until you're ready to inoculate to grow your own grain spawn. You don't have to inoculate them. You could wait a week. Okay, it's inoculation time. How exciting. Now we can inoculate your grain. Turn off all the fans and the heaters and anything else that stirs up air around you. You do not want to get a lot of contamination flying freely in the room above normal. Set up your area in a clean place where you have plenty of room. If you're using wood tables or something with a surface that can be damaged by alcohol, put down a clean plastic sheet to work on. Ask people to stay out of the area, because people and pets moving fast around you will send up more contaminants. The goal is to keep contamination to a minimum and get a good clean grow for your grain spawn. We can now inoculate the grain. You will need to set out your alcohol and cotton balls. Now set out in front of you the 4 jars. Why 4 jars? Well, because if one gets contamination, you still have enough grain spawn to make it grow. Light your candle and set it to your right or left. Go get your syringe of oyster mushroom culture out of the fridge and set it in front of you, shaking it up. Draw out a full syringe of your expanded culture using sterile techniques. By saying that, I mean when you're drawing this out, don't ever push it back in, because you might be taking contaminants and putting it back in your liquid culture. You don't want to do that. So always just dry out and pull out your needle. Do not dry it out or shoot it back. We just went over that. Just imagine germs on everything, because they are. Now have a seat and wipe down everything except the candle, of course, with rubbing alcohol with an alcohol-soaked cotton ball or paper towel. Use 70% alcohol, not 90%. You are ready to inoculate your grain spawn jars. You have wiped down everything with the 70% alcohol. Pick up your syringe of culture and wipe it good with alcohol. Of course, there will be contaminants in the needle shaft you can't get to anyway from the air, so we're going to flame it. Now, this is the following step we're going to do pretty quickly and smoothly. And as you do a number of grows, this is going to be just so easy for you and so automatic. Have a clean cotton ball sitting by, of course, wet with alcohol. Wipe the injection port, not the filter, but the rubber port with alcohol till it's good and wet. Place your syringe needle into the flame, but not too far back as to melt the plastic where it is attached to the syringe, and get it red hot on the first half by the point. Immediately take it out and wipe with the alcohol-soaked cotton ball, and as you're doing that, take it over to your just wiped injection port of your grain jar. Now insert it about halfway or so and expel approximately a quarter of the liquid of your syringe into your jar of grain. I try to hit a few sides, which seems to help because more culture seems to run down and get to more grain areas that way. Pull it out and wipe the needle with the alcohol again. I think it helps to keep the alcohol pad over the needle at all times after the first inoculation. This just gives you a filter for your air, and in my opinion, it just helps keep it clean. I keep an alcohol wet pad over the first half as I move to jar and jar. If I need to take a break, I'll fill another pad and I'll start the same procedure over. Now repeat these steps in red with the other 3 jars of cultured medium. Ah, congratulations, you can now take a breath. Well, now we can grow out your own spawn. Store your inoculated grain spawn in a dark room temperature area. 70s to 80s is fine. Watch for colonization. You will see the white starting to grow and spread. I like to shake it up when about a third white. This is all white, and this is mycelium. And when it's all white all the way to the top, it's ready to plant. So see my other video about planting step by step. Grow oyster mushrooms at home to do this. You should be very proud of yourself. You have learned a valuable skill. You will never regret this skill. Happy growing and the best of success to you. Thanks for watching my videos, and please help me make more videos by subscribing and liking. It also helps other people find this information. Please see my other videos on how to grow mushrooms, expanding your mushroom culture, growing them at home, and also look for properly cooked mushrooms for the best results. That's valuable information. Many ways to grow their oyster mushrooms. See, this is my friend. Her name is Nkakande Josephine, and she lives in Africa. And she's an African. She grew up there, and she's teaching her people in her village to grow mushrooms, as her mother taught her to grow vegetables in order to make money to send their children to school. Their children end up going to the mines if they don't go to school after a time, and they only lived about a year there. So this is a wonderful project. So if you give to people, if that's part of your life, I would suggest that you look at her Facebook page. I put a link down below. You'll find her work interesting, if nothing else, and